show. So it took his company a week with no word from him. I guess they figured that, okay, he'll be back. It just maybe got into some weather or whatever. So his company filed a missing persons case with the police. I kind of find this strange. Why wouldn't the family file missing persons report? But I mean, that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to throw that out there. That after all those days missing, why wouldn't the daughter, that maybe she just wasn't close, I don't know. So searching in the dark, they were completely in the dark of where to even begin. Because despite an extensive search, they found nothing of the family members, and there were a lot of family members. The biggest problem in this situation is that the killer really had a really big lead in front of them, with plenty of time to murder the victims, dispose of the bodies, and of course then clean the tracks of whatever, anything he touched or stayed, anything. The other, maybe even bigger obstacle was no one knew exactly where the family was camping, because it is such a large area. You don't really know the exact place that you are. But once you enter the state park, very few parks have great service. So even if, and they didn't back in 1982 have cell phones, of course, so it's even harder to figure out back then where people were exactly staying. Today, you've got trackers and all sorts of things, so it's a lot easier. But even in the deepest part of the woods, it is very difficult to pinpoint where people are. All the family knew was that, or all the police really knew, was this family was camping in the Wells Gray area, which is a massive. They had no idea where even to start looking, let alone follow a trail to find the family. They didn't know what entrance they took. They didn't know where they parked. Apparently, they did not find the camper. So 3 more weeks passed. And ironically, a mushroom picker finds the family. So on September 13th, the grim discovery of the Johnsons' 1979 Plymouth was found. The car had been burned beyond recognition as it set off to the side of a mountainside logging road. The car had the bodies of the 4 adults in the back seat and the 2 young girls in the trunk. The bodies were extremely burnt so thoroughly that when it came time to bury the family, they were all placed together in one child-size casket. So forensic examinations on the remains determined they had been shot with a .22 caliber firearm. So how did the locals help? Well, they were able to tell investigators that they had seen the family camped. A search of the area would turn up 22 casings, or the .22 caliber casings, which helped identify the weapon used as the Remington pump-action rifle. What wasn't at the campsite was the truck in the camper, the boat, the camping gear brought with the family, or any trace of the family at all. With no suspect in custody or even a description of one, the media obviously was all over this, especially back in 1982, where things were not as secretive investigate themselves, where we kind of rely on what other people say now. I mean, maybe not, that's just my opinion. So a tip does come in that the family's truck and camper had been spotted. The witness said 2 French Canadians in central Canada were driving it. The media, of course, jumped all over this. So they throw this up as the headline and demanding these killers be caught. In April, was still with no leads, the investigator knew they needed to get creative. They reenacted what they believed was the crime scene for TV cameras and aired it across Canada. The following month, of the police drove a replica Ford camper truck to Ontario and Quebec in an attempt to draw awareness for what people should be looking out for, but it backfired. The investigators were flooded with over 13,000, let me say that again, 13,000 sightings of the replica vehicle. The reward was raised from $7,500 to $10,000 for information leading to the truck. So none of these tips led to the discovery of the camper and truck. It would be found by absolute luck. So 2 forestry employees were working on a logging road and stumbled across it. The camper had sat there on Trophy Mountain for 14 months. So what people believed to be the truck and camper was not it, because it had been sitting on Trophy Mountain for 14 months, only a few kilometers away from the crime scene. The camper was burned out like the car holding the family's bodies. The camper's location left the authorities to believe they were looking for someone local to Wells Gray area, and not 2 French Canadians, since it was more likely that a local would know about the logging roads and the area in general. Taking another look at who lived closest to the crime scene led them back to David William Shearing, 24 years old. They had received a tip about him early in the investigation. When they followed the tipster had quite a bit to tell them. So, a year earlier, Shearing had asked about re-registering a Ford truck and how to repair a hole in its door. When the police found the Ford, it had a bullet hole in the door, but the police never divulged that bit of information. Well, that's frustrating. After an interrogation by the Royal Canadian Mounted, Shearing confessed. So he went so far as reenacting the murders for the detectives. So then he not only reenacts the entire murder scene, but he hands over evidence that he had stolen from the family and the murder weapon, the .22 caliber Remington rifle. The ballistic test would prove that this was the weapon used to kill the family. The same gun that had been hanging on his wall the very first time the authorities went to ask him about the family. Now this, I believe, was a very crucial part in the investigation. If you're questioning somebody about, and you know what type of rifle was used, and you see it hanging on this wall, I mean, they should be looking for this stuff, right? I mean, at that point, forensics wasn't such a big thing, so police had to use their eyes and their ears and their senses and their intuition more than they do today, really. I mean, they still have to use all that today, but back then it was so crucial that they looked at everything and were very, very officer. So Shearing's father was a corrections officer, or his brother was a sheriff. But Shearing wasn't suspected when first interviewed. That could probably have, and most likely had, a huge impact on the, I guess, the carefulness, or I'm not saying that there was a bad investigation. It was just probably not as, looked at as closely, because they had a sheriff to answer to and a corrections officer. So, you kind of stick with your own. I mean, it's just natural to think there's no way, if his father, his brother's a sheriff and his father's a corrections officer, how, this, maybe it's just somebody who wants to get back at him. That definitely could have been going through their mind. You never know. So in his confession, he gave details on the entire account of the murder. He had first noticed the family when they set up camp, fixating on the young girls, the two girls that were in the camp, in the tent, I mean. Then over the next few days, he watched their every move, so he's stalking them, and this family has no idea that they're being watched. That is terrifying. On the night of August 10th, Shearing watched as the adults sat around the campfire. So he had already seen the girls go into their tent for the night. From a distance, where he was stalking these poor people, this poor family, this innocent family. Oh, this just breaks my heart. From a distance, Shearing took out the four adults with sniper shots. He said that he killed the two girls in their tent as they slept. Now, the sheer terror that goes through me when I'm reading this and thinking about this, as I was reading this case and thinking about this, like, I always set up little booby traps in the tent and around the tent. Lights to come on or noises to make, and of course we have 3 dogs, but I don't know, I can't believe that confession and took them to his property nearby. Then he terrorized them for over a week. A week. Now, he terrorized these children for over a week. So completely different from his first confession, where he said that he had killed the girls in the tent while they were sleeping. On August 16th, the day their father was due back at work, Shearing took Karen away from her big sister. Once alone, he shot the girl in the back of the head. Janet would be left alive for one more day, being tortured and then killed. With the girls now dead, he took their bodies to the Johnson's car where the other family members had been placed. He had only hidden the car in some bush. He put the girls in the trunk and got into the driver's seat with the 4 decomposing adult bodies in the back seat. Then he drove it to its final resting place, where it would be found by the mushroom picker, where it was completely burned to a crisp. So David Shearing pled guilty to 6 counts of murder. Supreme Court Justice Harry McCabe has summed up the crime in his summation as a cold-blooded and senseless execution of 6 defenseless and innocent people. That's what I say. I mean, that was so unnecessary, and my heart just is crushed for those 2 little girls. The only thing I can say is that I'm glad their parents didn't have to know about what happened to them, because as a parent, that would just be, I mean, more than heart-crushing. I mean, just, it would, I don't even know what, I can't even put myself in that position, because it's such a horrendous act what this guy did. And not having any priors, would he just wake up one day and decide, well, gee, at 24 years old, and I'm going to go out and find a family to completely destroy? I don't understand that. This is a complete tragedy and waste of life. For what? So Shearing was sentenced to life in prison with no eligibility for parole for 25 years. Now, this is the maximum penalty for second-degree murder. So he was only found guilty of second-degree murder for these 6 innocent people. Oh, it just breaks my heart. So in 25 years, this man so he'd be 50. That's it. Not even 49. Well, he's probably in their years, so probably about 49 years old when he's set free, or has the chance to be set free. This case would be the first time that this sentence was handed out in Canadian history. David Shearing changed his last name to his mother's maiden name of Ennis. He was first eligible for parole in 2008. The National Parole Board ruled against his release, citing that he still had violent and inappropriate fantasies and had not completed a offender treatment program. Again in 2012, he was turned down for parole, applying again in 2014, but in his hearing he would mercy, no recourse, no second chance for them. There should be no starting over for Mr. Ennis, unquote. And I absolutely agree with this. I mean, I don't think in all the years I've been watching true crime, talking about true crime, reading about it, or videotaping these true crime ASMR videos, have I ever heard of such a unprovoked. I mean, there's lots of cases where they're unprovoked, but these are two innocent children and a family that had no idea that this man, he wanted to steal their possessions and hurt their children. I mean, what a waste of everybody's life. I mean, that's so horrible, even of his own. He not only ruined his own life and 6 innocent people, but he ruined the lives of his family, probably embarrassed his father and his brother, I am sure of. Which is why he probably changed his name, probably at the request of his father and brother. I know I would ask my brother to please change your name, or my child, if they did something like that to a family, and especially those poor children. It just gets me riled up because I just can't imagine what those little girls, can you imagine what they were thinking, how scared and how helpless they felt, and knowing that their parents are deceased, imagine, and that they couldn't come and help them, that there was nobody to come and help them. My heart truly breaks for the family members that were in this, obviously the victims and the children, oh my God, but I mean the family members that have to think about this every day, from the victims, and how they have to relive this tragedy. So, that is the end of this sad, sad case, and I hope it has provided some education and just got you thinking about being careful about who's watching you, watching your family, and just to always be extra careful when you're camping or you're in the woods where somebody could be looking at you, watching you, stalking you. But thank you for listening. I appreciate